Greetings, Dalian. Greetings, Dalian.
Yes, greetings. That Mark, how you doing?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You all right?
What was he saying? I was trying to hear what you're saying.
No. This brother's only got I think 15 minutes. So yeah, greetings, family. Yeah, please give us the information you got, fam.
Yeah, I've been listening to the conversation for a little bit, and what I'm hearing is that Shakara is getting be it questioned on the fact that you cannot say or use the word African spirituality because there are various African if you want to call them, for lack of a better term, tribal expressions. So you cannot have one notion that covers all these expressions. Yeah?
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah, he's speaking, Ezra. Yeah. Sorry, brother Dalian, Ezra can't hear you, so I think he'll have to go out and come back in.
Yeah, Ezra,
I should leave the studio and come back in.
No. He might need to leave. Can everybody else hear Dalian?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can hear him.
So Ezra needs to go out and come back in then.
We name Veli, stand by, please. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Dalian, just to clarify what's happening there is happening is this year. There's been a lot of debates and arguments, so therefore some people just lump Islam, Judaism, Christianity, so to speak, or Hebrew Israelites, Muslims and Christians together, say the Abrahamic religion teaches slavery, it's enslaved us, and so on and so forth.
Wait.
I'm okay, that's interesting.
Can I have an entrance?
Hold on, bruv. Let me just give that. I'm just giving him an angle. A little
Can I get my entrance statement, please? Can I just get like one sentence, please? Yeah, none of you Abrahamic shoe shiners can't bad up Shaka. You get what I'm trying to say? None of you. Mind yourselves, yeah? All right, cool.
All right, yeah. So, my brother, what I was saying was this, yeah? There's been conversations in these debates, yeah? So, what it is, the people, let's say, who are called Abrahamics, not me, but let's say a lot of other brothers, what they're trying to get from those who are coming from the perspective of saying they follow African spirituality is a set of clear-cut principles that you follow where they can say, okay, either this thing allows for either slavery or certain behavioral traits that they can say are either underneath or superior to, do you know what I mean? They want to do a comparative study. That's basically what's happening here. You get what I'm saying? So last week, obviously, it was the Bible and stuff. Now we've got African spiritual systems. Are they good? Are they? If they're so good, why are we losing, etc.? So this is the angle that there's a lot of these discussions are coming from, and the frustration is that. So it's in other words, if you say African spirituality, somebody could say the people that are using the bones or the body parts of the albinos to do whatever they're doing, right? Some people say with magic, you could call it African spirituality. And then somebody would say, no, that's not lawful or that's not wrong. If you haven't, let's say, got a clear-cut thing to say that's wrong, then the argument just goes away. Do you know what I mean? It goes.
I get your point.
Thank you.
I get your point. Now, for me to even get into it, the first thing that we have to accept as fact is that most people don't take time to study anything about African spirituality. Yeah. So this is where all of this, from what I'm hearing, it's actually a lot of ignorance. People claim they don't want to know, they want to know about African spirituality, but their same religions prevents them from going to even just study about it because it's already considered evil. So to me, there's a double standard there already prevailing. And I'll use your very example where you talked about, because you're talking about I can't remember if it's in Zimbabwe or Zambia, somewhere in Southern Africa anyway, where they claim that they can use albino body parts to do magic or something equally weird like this, yeah? For you to understand how we see most African spiritual expressions now, you cannot divorce it from the interaction with Europeans or Arabs. Because even when you look at an albino and the skin tone, this is what you have to look at. And this is where you see why most of us are ignorant about anything of African origin. An albino's body part looks like a white person's skin. So what you see there is a conflation of what we might call energetic work with the idea that everything that is white is right. It is not indigenous, because this is why you don't find it anywhere else. that same expression, because if that was the case, then we should find the same understanding that albinos can bring about some kind of magic, whatever, in Ghana. You should be able to find it in Central Africa. You should be able to find it even in, should we say,
it's in Nigeria also. It's in Nigeria.
In Nigeria, it's not albinos. It can be anybody part. This is, you find it in Ghana too. It's not strictly restricted to albinos. So you have to try and understand the expression as you see it physically on a certain conceptual level, and in Africa's case, also along certain vestiges of colonialism. You understand? There are at least 5 main tenets which we know in every expression that you can find. There is always the understanding of a supreme source from which everything comes from. This supreme source is not just a man who's sitting in some place called heaven. It's many things. And those things that they are, you see them expressed in the way Africans do ritual. Whether it's the reason why we drum, because we know that drums have certain vibrations that can cause certain physical body changes. Yeah. So you might see he's drumming or she's drumming, but they can't tell you even why the drumming has a need. They know
is this put into, is there some kind of system? So I got 2 questions. One, is there some kind of system? So like it's not random, right? So like drumming and stuff, is there a system that it falls under, a specific system like you're talking about? And 2, is it a naturalistic system, or does it observe like supernatural phenomena as well?
When you say there's one system, every system has within it that expression. That is the best way I can put it. So this is where you will identify where they correlate. Okay, there's no African group of people where you won't find that they might have certain drumming sessions for the whole community. It might be a healing communal ritual where they will get be the custodian of whatever force they've managed to identify within nature as their protective force, what most people call deities or gods or whatever else. You know, the terms that people have forced onto African spirituality without giving Africans the opportunity to express themselves in terms of what these factors are. You know, so no, everybody will drum, but they might drum for similar reasons. As I said, it could be for a healing for the whole community. It could be healing for.
When I say system, I mean like it's not written down, right? So would you say that all these individuals, or are they? Could you pick one randomly and say? So the 2 questions. Pick a random one, something that you know you have the most information about. Is that like a codified system, number 1? Number 2, is it a naturalistic system?
Absolutely. The first thing I'll pick up is what Africans know as the natural forces, what people call the deities. Some people know them as Orisha, the Neteru, the Minkisi, if you go to the east of Africa, Odinani in Igbo, Akan, the Abusum. These are natural forces that Africans use to understand how to build social cohesion, how to understand the way the human body itself even works. Yeah, so it's not a natural law that the African has codified themselves. It's a natural law that in its expression, the African understands how societies work, and nature itself works. So yeah, it doesn't need to be written in a book. You see it in its expression.
And it's
when you say the African, that's not everyone in the community though, is it?
Hold on, boy, Esau, sorry, and it's naturalistic. Yeah, fundamentally, it's naturalistic. There's no reports of supernatural phenomena. It's all can be explained within naturalism. Yeah, my brother.
When you say supernatural, first of all, what does supernatural mean?
So something that cannot be repeated, cannot be explained.
Is that what it means?
You see,
you're
using words that have no bearing in
brother. I'm saying so. A naturalistic would be there would always be a natural explanation for something, innit? And you'd be able to repeat and demonstrate it.
But that's not true. That's not true.
Interesting assertion. I'll tell you something. We all use electricity. Do you know there's no scientist that can tell you the source of electricity? There's absolutely nobody. Einstein, bring them all. They can't tell you. It's a force that we know how to harness. We can harness it, but no one can tell you, oh, the source of
scientific theory.
So I don't really understand your question. It's very simplified.
No, okay, what he's saying is from the Western, he's saying from the Western paradigm, what they call natural over there is something that breaks those norms. So, for instance,
but listen, even
a man turns into a goat, hold on, gets arrested, like in Nigeria, it was in the newspaper, right? So he's saying, how do you consider supernatural?
Fucking hell, bro.
Okay, let's keep it at the moment. James, one person can talk and the other person can ask. I can hear you better that way.
James, 1 second, because you kind of came in a bit and Dalian hasn't been able to answer this question properly about the idea of African spirituality, and he was actually going down the road of explaining 5 common themes. Also, brother Dalian, I want to point out that you are an Ashanti who engages in Ifa, which is a Yoruba a spiritual system. So I'd like for you to also explain, while you're explaining this thing, how is it you as an Ashanti man can engage in a spiritual system that is considered to be different to the one that you're born into?
Very good question. Thanks for narrowing down the parameters for me to kind of, because as you know, this is a topic you can talk about all day and you still haven't even skimmed half of it. So the reason why, as an Ashanti man, I'm also initiated into aspects of what you call the Ifa or Yoruba system is because that is the system that has the most, if you want to call it, clearly defined categories that could make my Western educated mind really, first of all, get a grip of what African spirituality entails. Yeah, that's the main reason. So in the Akan expression, for instance, the way you will work with nature, you would have a natural force that is centered somewhere, let's say in your if you want to call it village, and then there's one custodian who works with that energy, and so everyone comes to see that custodian. Okay, so if you're from a particular village, maybe your custodian might have been, I don't know, let's take an alligator for instance. Now, when you research why the alligator becomes, if you want to call it, for lack of a better term, a totem for that whole community, you find that somewhere in its history of forming, I don't know, they had some kind of experience or encounter with this particular animal that helped them. So then they take that animal as an embodiment of that force of good that assisted them. Yeah, the Yoruba system is also very similar, if not the same. However, you can also be apportioned a particular energy that works with you personally. So in my case, when I did my divination, what came out was that I have the head of Ogun. And Ogun, as most people will maybe not necessarily incorrectly, but partly attribute, they'll say, yeah, Ogun is some kind of god of war or god of energy. But then when you become an initiate and you start, they start showing you certain things deeper than the common narrative, you start to realize that what you're talking about is a principle of transformation. In the same way you can transfer or transform iron ore from a piece of rock into a piece of jewelry that you can wear, or to become a pot that you can use to cook. Yeah. So there's the knowledge that, yes, non-initiates might know, versus the knowledge that those who are deeply within it will be allowed to know. Yeah. So for me, as an Akan, in my system, we also have an energy point called oh God, what's it called again? Dadia Kofi. That's it. Dadia Kofi means Kofi of the iron, or iron Kofi. Yeah, it's the same principle as Ogun that the Yoruba is referring to, because Dadia Kofi also comes from the earth. It's the same iron ore. So for me as an Ashanti, this is no different. Me, whether I've gone to the Dadia Kofi shrine to get that, if you want to call it, energy object to carry with me, It's the same as the Yoruba man who do a divination and find the same Ogun. It's conceptually, it's not different. Maybe the physical expression of it is, but at the conceptual level, it's the same.
So Dalian, one second, because this may help you. In relation to African traditionalists here on the ground, on the continent, do traditionalists, from what we call, sorry, can I just bear in mind that Brother Dalian has traveled to Southern Africa, West Africa, Cuba, well, him and his wife, I should say, Brazil, Cuba, Haiti as well. And a few other places studying African spirituality. Now, in the places that you have run, particularly on the continent now, that you know of, do African spiritualists, traditionalists, find it difficult in terms of relating to each other? Is there conflict between spiritual systems, and is there an emphasis on keeping the different spiritual systems distinct, separate and distinct from the other traditional spiritual systems that are around them?
Hey, I like your questions, man. You're helping me manage my own thought process, which is very good. Absolutely not. Look, I have my personal Babalawo comes from 3 generations of Ifa priests.
Sorry, Baba Dalian. Babalawo is a priest or father of mysteries in the Ifa traditional system. So
yes, basically the Babalawo is the person who can read his cowrie shells or use his Ifa board to give you an understanding of yourself and possible events that might come up in your future or your lifetime. 3 generations deep, he will still wake up and go and learn from a South African Zulu Sangoma and feel no way about it, because nature is so vast, we cannot be all of its constituent elements. You learn to improve. The conflict mainly comes from, I would say more, I guess if you want to call it, the way be Eurocentric or even certain foreign thoughts perceive the world, where it compartmentalizes everything to be unique and distinct without recognizing the interconnection between everything, because history is a progression. We didn't just start from some place and had 0 and then all of a sudden we knew everything. We gradually developed, which is why we even find elements of African or even, for lack of a better word, pagan systems or understandings of nature, even in the Abrahamic traditions, from Christmas to how you use the moon to plan our Ramadan. These are nature, using nature to identify something. This God doesn't come and tell these clergy what day Ramadan comes. They use the moon. You understand? It's a natural practice. So they might not want to concede that, but if you peel the surface, it's the very same core that's there.
I would suggest that there's a lot more in common with the so-called African spiritual systems and rituals and so on, or the reasons behind the rituals, than has been made to have been seen when you actually go into the original languages. So
I will agree with you on that, brother, fully. And this, you see, again, we have to realize that when we're dealing or even talking about religion and even spirituality, we should not minimize the impact of people's personal desire for power, because this is where we start to see a lot of the conflict, where people try to shape the things for their own benefit.
Dalian, what do you know? This is my final question here. What do you know? What do you know of the history of the Ashanti people? Like, what was you taught about the history of the Ashanti people and the development of Ashanti culture?
Well, boy, in what you mean, the school setting?
In general, so in whatever setting. So what is your understanding of the development of Ashanti people or their history and their culture?
Okay, well, I will break that down to, and I think, Shakara, when you finish your question, just let, I think it's called Banda Sunni Enslavers, and James also asks 1 or 2.
Most.
Yeah.
I
learned about the Akan, be it, I don't even want to use the word empire, but yeah, the Akan Confederation in school was very different to what I came to learn myself in my own research, you know. And then it also made me realize that much of history comes from It's what they've allowed to be written down. Yeah. So even when I was in school in Ghana, I didn't even know that what we call Ghana isn't where the country Ghana was, or those borders. It had a history that stretched way back before Songhai and before the Malian Empire. And later, when I was doing my research, it's when I started to find, like, so for instance, we have the Asantes have these things called Adinkra symbols, which are like codified visual proverbs. You know, they can tell the whole story by themselves. And again, I thought this was something that was part of our culture from the modern day Ghana. But the thing goes as far back as that ancient Ouagadougou or old Ghanaian empire. And you see some of these symbols trace all the way through and come back to the modern day Ghana. And then interestingly enough, when I was in South Africa, I went into they have this cave. It's called the Wonderberg Cave, yeah, where you see modern science attest that this is the first place we know human beings using fire. Because when you go there, you see little like bits where people were using fire. And on the walls, in the drawings, you can start seeing the development of this same Adinkra symbol that I just mentioned. It's called the Adinkrahene. It's 3 circles together. And the Adinkrahene in a Akan understanding of today is that those 3 circles represent the creative source. And it didn't escape me that the circles were also 3, because in religions now you find this concept of a trinity. Yeah, so we can find many areas of what's the word? Overlap.
What correspondence?
Yeah, exactly, or correspondence. Yeah. So no, what I learned in school about the Asante Empire was really what the British had left, because one of the strategies that I saw the British do is most of the so-called African tribes we know about were the ones that the British had the most, should we say, dealings with.
Yes.
So what we have left is not the total history, but just what the British wanted us to remember.
Yes, sir. I'll give up the mic. Go ahead.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I'll go last.
Let me just read up these things. Where they go?
Is it the 5 tenets I put in the comment?
One sec. So this is what the brother wrote. There are a minimum of 5 tenets that unite all the various African knowledge system expressions. Right. So I've just remembered what I was going to put to you then. In relation to, I think you gave, was it Ogun? You gave an example of, and methodology, I think you said. And was it the Yoruba system and the Akan? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So what my own analysis is that if you're dealing with, number one, a different language, which would therefore generally have even a very slightly different history, still a different history, and maybe even a different area, but also there's a holistic cultural development. So therefore, whatever expression you have of that, let's say, deity or spirit or whatever you want to call it, Loa, Orisha, etc., would be slightly different because it manifested maybe at a different time or however it is. But is this where our brother Shakara and yourself would say, essentially, these are the same thing? But it's just, it's almost like having, let's say, a vehicle or a car, which would need something different according to the environment. So, for instance, if you're in a different place where your tires, when I went to the Caribbean, most of the stuff that I took over there, anything that was plastic was starting getting brittle and brocking up. But I'm saying, according to environment, time, need, etc., it would be different, but the essential thing is the same.
Yeah.
Is that where we're going with the difference of expression of the same Orisha, etc.?
Absolutely. I like your analogy there. And the only thing I can add to that is, if you're wearing boots today and your wife is wearing high heels, are you not all wearing shoes? Yeah. So maybe your wife's high heels came later when a certain fashionable understanding developed. But the thing is, at a conceptual level, a shoe does the same thing. It's to fit your feet so you don't have to walk on the stones. Just because they look different doesn't mean they're different. In function, they perform the same functions.
Okay, let me continue with what the brother said. So after he said there is a minimum of 5 tenets that unite all the various African knowledge system expressions. Number 1, understanding of a supreme creator. So I would say very important to this is the word understanding of a supreme. So it's not just we believe in, understanding of. So I'm assuming that wasn't an accident. You put in there understanding of. So for me, that's a study which other people should understand that it is a study. Nature and the natural forces, ancestorhood, number 3, rituals and invocationary practices, and 5, divine purpose of humans. Is there, let me just ask Ezra a question while you're there. Ezra, if you can give us a simple, concise answer. Is there any one of those 5 that you would say is not part of the tradition of the Torah and so on?
Yeah, not in concept. I think all of them are there in concept.
Okay. In principle, yeah? They're all there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So nature and natural forces, you would say angels, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And ancestorhood, obviously we know what going on there, right? Rituals, yep. Divine purpose, yeah.
The word Elohim itself means powers.
Yeah. But I'm saying we distinguish obviously with the angels and understanding of supreme creator. Yeah. So you got Yahweh Shai, or Okay, yeah. Now bring up my brother. Yeah, please go ahead. Ezra, you were gonna say something.
Thank you for the questions.
No, blessing, brother, blessing. Ezra. Oh, my name. Brother, my name's Isa, by the way. Yeah, the one with Sunni and slavers. Yeah, Isa. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right, Isa. Pleasure to meet you, brother. Yeah. Thanks for your questions, man. I love it. Beautiful.
Alhamdulillah. Ezra,
man, big up, brother Dalian. Nice to meet you. My name's Ezra.
Yes, Ezra.
Yeah, man. Just a few questions, really. Have you ever heard of? I understand it might not be your understanding of your history and ancestors, but have you ever heard of any other Ashanti brothers say that their ancestors were Hebrews?
Yeah, I've heard a few. It's actually gaining a lot of popularity now. Not just them, but the Igbos as well have kind of caught onto that very quickly. And they don't generally say they're Hebrews. They tend to say they're Israelites, and they come from Israel. Yeah.
Okay, same thing.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, man. So, okay, just wondering because, basically, we've been having a discussion for a while, and I've been taught in Ashanti teachings by somebody called Ada Kofi in Birmingham. Don't know if you've heard of him. Yeah, but
the name rings a bell.
Yeah, so he's taught us a lot of things. He's showed us about the Ashanti priesthood. And basically, that long garment that they wear with the blue lines on. Yeah. Yeah,
I think you're referring to Batakari. Yeah.
Yeah. What's he saying about Batakari? He wears that garment, and he explains to us the history, and he shows us in the Bible as well where that history comes from, where all Israelites are commanded to have a border of blue and fringes on their garment, and so he's just showed us a lot of history, and I do understand that not all Ashanti subscribe to this, but I just wanted confirmation that some Ashanti that you know of do subscribe to it. Yeah.
Where and why do you think, brother Ezra, that let me think of the question kind of carefully, because first of all, the Batakari you mean is the garment that has it's basically looks a bit like a waistcoat. It's cut at the sleeves, yes, and then it flows down. Is that the one you mean?
Yeah, that's the one.
Our normal sugar that we put across our bodies, which is just one big cloth.
Yes, that's the one. It's like wrapped across the shoulder, and then it comes down into like a long garment at the bottom.
Okay. So the normal cloth. Yeah. Okay. Go on. Yes.
So basically, he's got a few different ones, but he's got this one in particular, where it's got like the borders of blue at the bottom. Yeah, and I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's like a hard cloth, white material, but then it's got like blue lines, like fringes.
And it will have different lines in it. Thank you for bringing that up.
Different patterns with the blue line in it, but it's always consistent.
Yes. I know what you mean now. Okay, and in some places you have people who put what people commonly call talisman all over them. Finish your point, and then I'll also tell you something about that.
You go. I just wanted confirmation that you know of such a thing.
That particular garment, you see, what is if you want to call it native to the Akan or Asantes, is what people call the kente cloth. Yeah, now the kente cloth also has its own kind of very deep history, because back in the day, as far as I'm aware, people will sew stories. The patterns that you see are actual narratives. They're just not, I don't know, like a good-looking design. The patakari that you're referring to, it actually originates in the northern part of Ghana. It's from the northern people who are also largely Muslim now. It's not an Asante origin item. That much I can tell you for a fact.
Okay, fair enough.
Can I jump in quickly? Yeah, are you done, Ezra?
Yeah,
what about the breastplate? What about the breastplate?
Hold on. Before we do
James.
Sorry. Let him finish. Please don't worry. I said I'll take some from Ezra, James, and then Mark, and then I can. Yeah, I'm getting here too. Okay, let's go on. Yeah, so go on, Ezra. You were saying, you said something about the breastplate, yeah?
Yeah, okay, yeah. That garment, in fact, in Shaka's picture, it's a bit like that garment, the one I was talking about.
Yeah. I can see its visual links to Hebrewism, if we will call it that. And remember before I started talking,
you can't use it as a Muslim thing, because that's what Shaka's got there, but it's just the difference is the priest have the white one with the blue lion at the bottom and blue lions coming down on the shore. I know it. And this is what I was telling you, that perhaps in the Asante tradition you would find a priest wearing that. You won't find a common man per se. And then you see them sew objects of power on it. Yeah, so I can see where you might get the link with this breastplate from the kind of. Because all I'm saying is that in the Bible, the Levitical priest, they're commanded to make a breastplate, in 12 stones, 12 precious stones, and gold, and the Levitical priests are always meant to have that. And when we talk about the garments, there's a commandment for all the children of Israel to put a border of blue on the edge of their garments with fringes on. You know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is when we go to the Ashanti now, and plus Ashan is one of the original names of the children of Judah. Yeah, the original families that came out of Kemet. There's a list of each tribe's names of the families. Like there's a list of all the families of Judah that came out of Kemet, all the families of Benjamin, and amongst that list of we find Ashan, a family called Ashan. You get me? And I just think it's not really a coincidence that we find an Ashan mentioned in the original tribe of Judah, the first list of Judahs. Ashan is there. Then we find their priests with the same breastplate. We find their priests with the same garments.
You know, brother, I like the description that you've given just now. And you see, if for me, and Shakara knows my status on this, if more people were willing to just, you don't even have to entertain. The thing is, African spiritual practitioners and adherents, we need to breathe. Yeah, because we get suffocated with a lot of this, your thing is evil, your thing is this. But the thing you're also ascribing to has its origins here too. So for me, this is it just and it creates a necessary conflict that you cannot live and let live. Shakara knows my opinion on this. You know what I mean? If we can see all these correlations, then on which ground do you stand to say and condemn the other as evil?
That's the thing. I don't do that, my brother. And that's the thing with the Bible. Like, I understand that we're Christians and like some people do, but the Bible tells us not to abhor the Hamites, the native Africans, the people who are not of Israel. It tells us we can't hate them. It's a law. You know what I mean? So we will get into back and forth trolling and jokes and that, but I don't end of the day, they're allowed to worship according to our belief system. They're allowed to worship their God. Everyone's allowed to worship their own thing. You know what I'm saying? So whenever a Christian or Israelite like shows hatred towards you, you have to bring him back to that line where Israel is not. It's a commandment for Israel not to hate the native Africans. You know what I'm saying, man?
Okay,
Yeah,
well, that's good to know. I'll remember that when I encounter another person who tries to tell me that. Yeah. So thanks, brother Ezra. Okay, go on, brother James.
What's your name? Is your name Dalian?
Yes, Dalian.
Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm really glad that you've come because, I mean, usually Ezra's mocks and disrespects African spirituality, but the fact that you're here now, I feel like has brought a bit
He's
of
lying.
That's cool. That's cool.
That's
cool. We're still here after centuries of being attempts to totally eradicate it. So yeah, it's
on record. Obviously, the Hebrew Israelite God doesn't mind the coward. But the point I was going to make to you, the original point about naturalism, would you say that it's fundamentally naturalist in that, say, example, like simple example, there's no real miracles that you're forced to believe in your
yes. No miracles per se. There has been many instances of let me put it this way, right? There's stuff that you get to know when you go onto different level of initiations that it's not stuff for you to be speaking about in the public domain per se, because you see, when you get into the African traditions, you realize that humility is actually a reflection of power. It's not how we see power, which is that if you have power, that means you can dominate over everybody. Yeah, in a sense, it becomes a challenge that the more you know, the more you need to shut up. Do you understand? And wait and disclose the right information with the right people. Because I've personally seen and experienced things which no scientific endeavor can ever explain. Ever.
That's not a principle to believe in what you believe in, right? So the things you've seen, is that personal, or are you saying that that it's expected of people to view it, or it's people are expected to accept what you say is true because they believe in the same thing?
Right. No. You're not. You're. There's no expectation for you to believe anything. Everything that you work with, you experience it. So this is what I'm telling you, that what I've seen and I've experienced is what I can speak about. I don't need to speak about something I believe in, because I've experienced the thing. I experience it every day, so I don't have to believe it because it's part of my life.
Let me just give it 10 seconds.
No,
10 seconds, James. No, I want to keep it to the subject. One sec, brother. One sec.
I've asked one. You let people have fucking.
No, bro, it's on the same thing. Just calm down, man. All right. So all I was going to say was
that was a question I wanted to get out of the way, and I asked it about 20 minutes ago, and you cut in then as well.
Yeah, I beg. Let James ask his question.
Let James go. Come on, bro. It's a bit unfair. Like Ezra was out here waffling. You could have cut him. But talking about fucking League 2 football kits and that. But the second question I was going to ask, which is the most important one, is it beneficial for Africa, because Africans or Africa or different individual nations? Because the question today is if African spiritual systems are so good, why are we losing war? And I think what that's implying is ultimately in the face of expansionist religions, we are always seen that African spiritual systems are seen as primitive and regressive. And they've always been consumed.
You're right.
That, please.
So is it good for Africans? And if it was so good, why are we losing the war? The first question I'm going to ask you is, when we look in terms of numbers, who practice? If you look at how many Africans are Christian or Muslim or the other, they outnumber by any significant measure any number of Africans who are allowed to practice their indigenous ways, because they will get ridiculed, so they have to hide things. Where have you seen any shrine or place of worship in the mainstream, whether it's on the continent or over here? If we start to apply like man-made ideas, like is it good or is it bad? Something is only good as it applies to the person who's benefiting from it, which is why Europeans have benefited from enslaving Africans, but Africans are victims of it and haven't felt the same level of benefit. If you want to say it's good, the best thing I can say is it's essential for your development. Yeah. And the reason why you might say we cannot see any impact of it positively benefiting the experience of Africans is not enough of us know about it enough to practice it. Because what we're essentially working with is, as I already said, energies that exist within nature, energies that exist within our very self. So when we're all of that same mind and practice, we can share energies, we can share minds.
But if it's hard to understand it, if there's no main corpus for you to refer to, isn't it ultimately always going to be regressive in the face of something that's come after it, and or something that's a little bit more I'd say advanced, but something that's definitely more expansionist? Isn't it always going to come up short? And then doesn't that make it obsolete or not really necessary for Africans to practice it, given that historically it's always come up short?
Lot of assumptions in that comment. I can't even remember them all, so I'm going to address them. But the first thing I'm going to say is, can you live without breathing the air?
No.
So how can African spirituality be obsolete? Or obsolete or totally?
I don't see the equivalence there.
Okay, so I'll tell you why. And again, the second assumption, I'll come to. Let me deal with that one first. Where you said there's a lack of corpus, absolute incorrect. Do you know the amount of literature and books from a whole heap of people? I can stretch you back.
No, but there's no simple one though.
So no. What I'm saying is, if these books are there, but the power dynamics in the society allows one to be more visible than the other, then if you're really interested in it, you're going to go and seek out those sources. So it's not a lack of corpus, it's rather a lack of willingness on people to go and discover this corpus of knowledge. So it's easy to say that there's a lack of it, just to kind of get away from the fact that you haven't made the effort to seek out this knowledge.
There's no central one. There's no central one. Let me just say one thing. Quick, simple deductive exercise. Yeah. African spirituality predates the Abrahamic faiths, for example. Abrahamic faiths come in a similar period, or contemporaneously with enslavement and colonialization. And being colonized. So what benefit would it have post colonialization?
Well, it gave us the Black independent nation. Do you know any other systems that have managed to do the same?
That have managed to liberate Africans?
Yeah.
Tell me, I don't know.
I already gave you an example. I said Haiti. Haiti's revolution started with a communal invocation of two specific natural energies. One aligned with transformation, which I just mentioned, Ogu, and then the other directed at the success of that revolution, embodied by the Loa called Ezili Danto. Yeah. Where do you know Africans who got together on even such a moderately large scale to put energy into something to bring a result from? Do you understand?
So you wouldn't argue that there was any kind of Abrahamic, let's say Christian influence in the Haitian Revolution. You would say that it was endemic in that group, or African spirituality was endemic in that group, and you'd say that had nothing to. There was no overlap with any kind of Christianity.
Not at all. You can even go back and read C.L.R. James's work, The Black Jacobins, and it's good because you can see he's not a practitioner of the traditions, but even he acknowledges it very clearly. The other, should we say, efforts that people try to do is to bring in the fact that there was a Haitian, for lack of a better word, priest called Bookman Dati, who we can kind of know had Muslim kind of, if you want to call it, orientations. So I've seen a few Muslim scholars try to basically hijack the Haitian Revolution and say, oh, it was a Muslim thing and all praise be to Allah. And that's, you see, we have to try and understand things very clearly.
What about like Toussaint? I'm never going to pronounce his surname. Yeah, would you say any of the sort of the key players or the main figures in the Haitian Revolution, what religion would they, or what spiritual system would they have identified with?
Look, energies use vessels. Toussaint wasn't at the first ritual. Toussaint came in later at the revolution, and actually Toussaint And you see, again, this is where I mentioned at the very first stage, the person who's doing the knowledge production can steer your mind along a particular path. The revolution, Toussaint came in at a later stage when he could possibly even see that it could be successful. He wasn't there at the beginning with the ritual that started off the revolution. So how could he have been instrumental? He's the one who's been written in because he had this bizarre love for the French. Yeah.
So post-revolution was it a Christian country? Post-revolution, would you have regarded the sort of main religious tradition as Christian? Would that be fair statement?
Well, yeah, it became, and then you can see the state of Haiti today. Had Haiti
so
kept
then,
that,
yeah, so then hold on. But I'm not. I haven't done it. You know far more than I do. But I'm not comfortable accepting that as evidence currently. Yeah. So let's just say that.
Let him finish, please. Let him finish. It's all right. Let him finish.
No, I'm not saying you're wrong in any way. I'm saying I'm not.
Well, you can't say that either. So you just not to accept what I've told you. That's fine. It's okay.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I would agree with you that it definitely preceded any kind of Abrahamic expansion into Africa. Yeah, or whether it started in Africa, or whatever the conception in Africa, but before that, African spirituality existed. Then comes what for us is our dark ages, right? Up until this point now, right? And I'm saying, how would you put forward African spirituality as a way of liberating ourselves when there is no clear evidence that there is even one sort of centralized understanding of it, and two, that it's ever had any kind of benefit for us in compared to the Europeans, who once they unified under one banner of Christianity or whatever, they dominated the world, or any of their sort of polytheistic, any of their religious traditions that assisted them in creating the most expansive empires that the globe has seen.
Well, you see, you asked a question, and I gave you a very clear evidence of a place where we know 150% that the liberation of the Haitians came from their communal practice of the ancestral traditions. You haven't done any research on it. You don't hardly know anything about it. And yet you're finding it difficult to accept it. To me, that makes absolutely no sense. You've asked for evidence. I've given you the evidence.
This is what I keep on telling them.
This is a matter of historical record. What was there not to accept? You told
hold on, just quickly. Sorry. So if cursory research, if you say key figures within the revolution identify as Roman Catholic, and by your own admission, post-revolution, or and then we'd have to discuss that, but we're saying that it didn't become the institutionalized sort of religious tradition. Then what am I? Hold on. What am I supposed to think then? I'm going to say that you're going to say that, and the sort of the people that inspired the revolution are of ex-belief, but the people that conducted, carried out, and ultimately were the people that formed the power structure. They were all Christian. For example, I'm not saying you're saying that. Then there's enough conflict for me to say that is not an example of a country that's being colonized now, or a country that's under neo-colonialism adopting African spirituality and liberating themselves in the long term. That's not evidence for that.
Okay, so first of all, you see, again, this is where learning and the history becomes important. Did you know that after the Haitians achieved that liberation struggle, wrote their constitution, the very same man who emerged leader at this point, which was Dessalines, because as I said, Toussaint, because of his bizarre love for French culture and their traditions, he basically effed himself up. So the person who carried through the whole thing to conclusion was Dessalines. Immediately after they announced the liberation and the formation of their country, do you know what Dessalines did? He nationally banned the practice of Vodou. Now, why would you do that for something that you know was essential for your liberation? Because you fear it and you want to keep that power for yourself. So, you see, again, I've answered your question for you, and I've also again told you why it never became a national religion. Because the man who it assisted to get power then turned around and suppressed the widespread practice of it. And again, this is a matter of the historical record. You don't need to believe me.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're lying. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Oh, well, I will never lie because there's never a need.
No, but I don't want to get misconstrued.
Let's go read CLR James, Black Jacobin, and then after I'll direct you to a Haitian professor called Patrick Bellegarde, teaches somewhere in Wisconsin, a Haitian himself. Dessalines made public efforts to ban the practice of Vodou after he was be enshrined as the leader. And it didn't take too long. He then ended up, he was murdered by his own people. Yeah. So I can understand why you would say that, because yeah, it never became, should we say, the official Haitian religion, but it was accepted just as much as Catholicism. But it's a matter of the public record. There would have been no Haitian revolution if that ritual of boys command never occurred. No one can.
Are you confident in African spiritual systems or a specific one being necessary for sort of wholesale African liberation, or do you accept that it's just an individual belief system? You know, it doesn't necessarily, it won't necessarily produce results in terms of liberation.
Energy is compounded in numbers, so it is both. It is both an individual practice and at a communal level. You only need to read Diop's book. What's it called again? The Shared Unity or Cultural Unity of Africa, to understand how you might have a family ancestor who can become a national ancestor. African spirituality is very fluid, and I do not see it or practice it from an individual place. Shakara asked me that question, I already answered. Because, and for the same reason that you just mentioned, what gave Europeans the power to be able to walk forward on a united front and just keep conquering, because they all ascribe to that one belief. So I'm not going to say, I subscribe to Asante spirituality.
Can I ask my question?
One second.
Sorry, thank you for that, brother. Thank you.
No problem, James. Good questions. Yeah, but look up that book. Black Jacobin.
Good question.
You need to read it.
I just got one question I want to ask you, but on this point, yeah, it's a good point, and I need the answer still. All I want to say is that, like James just said, yeah, if it is like what you and Chaka, maybe I've heard you wrong, but from what I've got from you so far, it's like it's more of a personal thing. It's like you said, it's fluid. It's more of like a personal thing, what you want to pick from. You know what I mean? So like, if it is that, then how are you gonna achieve the unity? Yeah, of the same. You know what I'm saying? If everybody's on this fluid personal thing,
common goal of liberation.
Huh?
Hold on, look.
Goal of liberation. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
He's saying, how are you going to achieve the common goal of liberation if you're practicing different systems that are personal development and stuff like that, rather than a common goal of the collective seeking this liberation or to win this war?
When I say something is personal and is also communal at the same time, what I mean by that, if I didn't make it clear before, is there's no dogma that will force you to say you have to believe that, for instance, God is a man or takes on the physical shape as a man. You, in your house, you might have a shrine dedicated to your immediate ancestor, who might be your grandmother. This is in no conflict to the, should we say, the communal totem or protection figure that, as I mentioned to you, could actually even be represented as a specific animal, let's say. Yeah. There is no, what's the word, conflict when you're in the practice. Let me also note this is very important. The tradition in academia to now start looking at African spirituality as one system is very recent. Okay, what we've had scholars in the past, let's say from the 30s to people like Mbiti or even Jaime Hines or Temples, is they focused on individual systems. So one might write a book only about Afrikan spirituality. The other will write a book only about Haitian Vodou systems. None of them were actively making the effort to show where these systems actually share something in common. So the tradition in academia of linking these systems together under that one umbrella is very recent. And we find that it becomes very important because, let's say, for instance, now we're in Brazil, where there's a whole group of Christian evangelicals who are calling themselves the Jesus Army, and they're going and killing off candomblé practitioners. If we have that unified umbrella, that shows that all these systems are of similar origin because they share these common tenets, what Islam will call, I don't know, the 5 pillars of Islam or whatever, then we can also work on their behalf. This is how political and social lobbying works. Do you understand? So you first need to create that foundation, and then you act from that foundation. But we don't have that foundation yet. That, as I said, that scholarship is recent, but it's getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just
No, my turn.
I think it's my turn now.
Remember, I was trying to get there with James on that question now, but all right.
My question.
Mine was quick. Mine was a quick thing. Go on.
All right, listen. Man, you lot are killing my questions, innit? I have to make up new ones. You get me? Yeah, blessings, brother Dalian.
Yes, brother Mark. How you doing? All right.
He's known my wife for a number of years as well, so I appreciate him in many ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so my question, again, is probably a little bit of a crossover with James and what some of the brothers were saying. I said, can we address what role the acceptance of African spirituality and I think the brothers need to remember this, or the commonalities between African spiritual systems and Abrahamic faiths based on the tenets that you've already outlined that an Israelite and a Muslim have recognized by their own, can play in uniting those of African descent around the world? And do you believe the sum of all African spiritual and cultural, literary and oral contributions should be codified into a oneness in book form or otherwise? And how does that play into the politics of the nation?
Well, absolutely. Wow. Mark, man, you've asked me about 4 different questions in that one. Okay.
I love it. I'm gonna come back to all the questions with Dalian's departed. But go ahead.
Yes. So, okay. Yes. Mark, can you kindly please repeat the question? Let me write it down. I'm gonna.
All right. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so let me to shorthand it. Mark,
let's break it up because there was essentially 2 questions.
Yeah. I'll
Type it in the chat, man.
Yeah. So, what role does the acceptance of African spirituality or the commonalities that you've explained based on the 5 tenets, which those men have already agreed to, what role can that play in uniting those of African descent around the world? I think that's what you're kind of suggesting. So can we expand on that?
Yes. Beautiful question, Brother Mark. Can you actually see how the minute I put those 5 tenets in there, who was it? I believe it's, Brother Isa could automatically see where him and I think, was it James? Could fit.
It was me.
Ezra. Sorry, apologies there. Could you see how they could fit themselves in those themes listed? So all of a sudden, it wasn't some superstition anymore. They could actually now start to get a glimpse of, actually, this isn't something I never knew about those traditions. So it's 100% important, that we have some basis for, I think it was James that was talking about this, having some kind of corpus of knowledge from us to read and learn from. It's not enough that we can condemn something from a place of ignorance. You can only condemn something if you're familiar with it. But this idea of condemning African spirituality when we know nothing about it, it makes no sense. So, of course, once we have this literature that people can refer to, then they can actually start to see where we're actually not that separate at all. And what we work with and experience is not going to some place under the earth called hell or whatever the suggestion is. It actually has nothing to do with that. This just comes from the imagination of those who oppressed us. And now we have taken that on board. But really, what we've taken on board is ignorance. We need to take the time to do the study. Yeah, right. It plays a big role in helping us get over some of our basic so-called differences.
Yes. Yeah. All right. I appreciate that. The second part of the question was, do you believe the sum of all African spiritual and cultural, literary and oral or otherwise contributions should be codified into a oneness in a book form, or can it remain as it is and still inform the political will of Africans all around the world?
It will have to be, you see, the way we've all been socialized in terms of how we live in this society, because this particular structure of the way society works comes from a certain Eurocentric view. So if this is the dominant system within which we have to operate, we have to use it to the best of our advantage. Most people now only kind of clearly understand things when it's codified and presented a certain way. So yeah, it will help us to put it in that way to foster understanding, because that is what will encourage us to see where the similarities lie versus our difference. And it will also be very important for all the different African nations. And when I say the African nations, we're not just talking continental, we're talking among the diaspora. We start to work more from a place of unity than difference. But you see, here comes the most important challenge, Mark. The resources to put together these resources, to codify them. Look, even scholars who and I'll take one example, his name is Dr. Asante. He's the one who's come the closest, from what I've seen, to creating an encyclopedia of African spirituality. 2 massive books. And even he tells you, look, this is still not the fullness of the research that we could have come up with. But the books are huge. Yeah, so it's a massive endeavor to be done. Where do we pull that money from to reward these researchers who will take time out of their lives to engage in this study? We need to think of where those funds will come from, to support, so that these are not people who can be living on a 9 to 5 every day trying to chase paper to do such a piece of work. They need to travel to places. They need to go deeper into the so-called creation myths of many different African people. All of this is going to cost some serious money.
Yeah, definitely. Last point. Thank you, Dalian. Last point.
No problem, my pleasure.
Last point I wanted to make was Dalian mentioned how recent the scholastic pursuit of the commonalities between the African spiritual systems is, right? How young it is. I would suggest, and I put it in the back chat a little while ago, how long it took Islam. So it took the man there, 23 years to reveal the Quran. Yeah, I don't know how long it took for the Bible itself, but also the Torah or whatever else is called to be formed. I think we can. I think the question for me is that if are people willing to do whatever it takes to unite Black African people around the world? If the answer is no, then I understand why certain people will keep coming up with the same questions and the same reasons to swerve this stuff. If the answer is yes, then we should all have the patience enough to see what can be gained from this uniting influence.
Brother M.A., bro, that's a beautiful point, my brother. I just got to affirm the ashe where after you just made that point. Ashe. Yeah.
Can I just off the back of what Brother M.A. Brown just said and your response, Brother Dalian, I would suggest that we, in whatever it is you're talking about, the corpus perspective, right? I think the internet has allowed us to speed up a lot of the things. So the brother mentioned the 23 years of the Quran, which generally, the 23 years is really a revolution you're talking about. It's not just a book coming down, so to speak, but it's coinciding with many events, etc. So I would suggest, in relation to what you said, I agree, a lot of resources, but to be honest, the internet is helping all of that. It would generally just take a lot of people from various areas coming together, having organization where maybe an hour a day or hour a week, whatever it is, and you're coming together and putting it in some sort of repository, website or whatever. You get me? And people go fund me, however it works, and people are, they're taking their time out. So we start funding them type of endeavors. You get what I'm saying?
Brother, it's good. Sorry to cut you. It's good you mentioned that, because there are plans in place for that, and there are people who are busying themselves with that. Yeah, so yeah, no, definitely. You're only speaking to the future right now. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, no. I was just saying that there is, because I mean, I'm seeing a lot of brothers making some good efforts. They're going places, they're videoing, you know, there's yourself. And I just realized that I don't know if I was there, but you was on Titans TV about 4 years ago. So
Yeah.
I might have been on. I thought I recognized your voice still. So there is, yeah, for me, one of my main things is that I'm finding that there's misunderstandings or at least expressions that are causing problems on both sides. So, for instance, those that deal with African spirituality, they're just bundling Abrahamic faith together and they're looking at it through this is a main problem, through the European lens. Just like the so-called Abrahamics are even looking at it through their so-called scholars or the European lens.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the Hebrew Israelite is more of a new ancient movement. So, from their perspective, they're refinding themselves, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could say whatever they come out with, it might be either theirs or it's partially theirs and European. Do you get me?
Yeah.
But I'm saying the one of the things that I'm finding the problem is that the Afrocentrics are generally academic based. Do you get what I'm saying? They're not just dealing with a belief thing. It's like, well, what's the research on this? And it's continuing. But it doesn't match up when it comes to dealing with the so-called Abrahamic faiths. You still seem to say, well, whatever we discovered and what was written in 1970 and 80, we're just going to roll with that. And I find that's a big stumbling block right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
Dalian, let me. May I just?
Come on. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right? The issue there is, the issue that we have where that is concerned, right, is that when we talk about African spirituality, we are trying to correct centuries of misinformation, demonization, and mischaracterization that has been imposed upon African spirituality by the practitioners of these respective faiths. Yeah. And so the weight of our job is to restore dignity, pride, and respectability to our traditions, to indigenous African spiritual traditions. If the Abrahamic traditions that have so characterized African spiritual traditions have done so using doctrines or misusing doctrine coming from their text, is secondary to the pursuit of restoring dignity to African spiritual traditions. The reality is that the perception of African spiritual traditions that the world has was not defined by African spiritualists. It was defined by people that adhere to the traditions of Abraham, mischaracterizing the thing. The impression that African spirit traditionalists who are challenging the mischaracterization of African spirituality as laid down by those who practice the traditions of Abraham have gotten their ideas of those traditions from the people that practice those traditions. It's not a mischaracterization based upon our experiences and what we were taught from these people. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? So
you're promoting. You're showing point is that yeah, go on, sir.
Yeah, maybe so, but my only point is that it is not the responsibility of those who are restoring the dignity to African spirituality to cater for how people have, if they have, misused Abrahamic religions. We are addressing the issue of how those who practice Abrahamic religions have used those doctrines to mischaracterize what we are dealing with. That is a work in and of itself. And so,
right,
and that is to be respected.
No, but no. This is my whole problem.
You make a good point, Chakara. You make a good point. Go on, brother.
I suggest that there is the problem, because if you're saying we're working together, and you can't, because my point is, you find with Ezra and the team, let's say his brothers, they are forging themselves away from specifically the Eurocentric viewpoint. So they're evolving and learning. And I'm saying, if you're just going to say, well, because you're Abrahamic and you're linked to the Abrahamic who was demonizing us, we're not going to put out a bridge and a branch there so that we can come to a meeting place between us, then you get me? That's already you turning up your nose. You get what I'm saying? Because the first step that they're doing is saying, right, I'm not taking my interpretation and understanding from the peckerwood monkey. I'm standing on my black square and I'm saying, well, how do I view this book, myself, and the other people that may look like me and everyone else, in fact, from my own perspective.
Lisa, let me just speak on that, because that's a great point, and it's like, especially when we see it as a so-called African spiritual system ourselves. You get me? You know what I'm saying? Like, and then for them to say, "Oh, we're anti-African because we want to separate from the rest of the actions of the continent," yeah, because we're a specific set of people with a specific set of culture, yeah, and we don't want to mix that, yeah, like that don't make us anti anything. You know what I'm saying? And like with the brother, yeah, I'd like to know what the brother thinks about the name Africa itself. Like, when do you think the name Africa was first came into this like existence? Because like we know for a fact it wasn't always there. You know what I mean? So
can I just add to that question?
Before you add to the question, though, I do want to respond to what you were saying before. I was going to speak before Ezra spoke, and I let him go. Right. The reality is, yeah, that I think that you'll find, brother Isa, that when it comes to putting out the hand, yeah, to other brothers and sisters in Abrahamic faiths, the African spiritual systems and African spirituality has a far better record of doing that. It wasn't called than our brothers and sisters in Abrahamic faiths. Yeah. There is nothing in an African spiritual system that inherently condemns practitioners of other spiritual systems, Abrahamic or otherwise. Nothing. Yeah. And the reality is that in our community, what's it called? Even, and I know there are Black Muslims and Christians who are honest, who will actually say this, that they're given more respect among African spiritualists than African spiritualists are given among their faith communities. Okay, that is a reality, right? So if you're talking about lending out a hand, yeah, there is no issue with brothers.
I'm talking about academia, man. You know, I'm talking about academics.
Either way, bro. In academia,
it's even worse.
In academia, when Muslims write about Islam, it is not incumbent upon them to include African spiritual systems in their research. When Christians write about Christianity, it is not incumbent upon them to include African spiritual systems in their research. When Hebrews are dealing with Hebrew doctrine, they don't include African spirituality in it, except to condemn it, right? So the point is, the point, Ezra knows what I'm talking about is true, right? He knows what I'm talking about. And the reality is, all of the academic traditions within those religions have condemned African spirituality. So if the African spiritualist is breaking down the miscarriage, this is what you don't know. I don't want to say failing to understand, because I think it's easy to understand. There have been centuries of academic traditions in certain religions that have informed the way African people and the rest of the world have viewed the traditions that myself and Brother Dalian and others are defending. And so we now have to wade through those scholarship traditions in order to restore the truth, yeah, and miscorrect and challenge the lies that have been told. Right. So if that is so now, if brothers and sisters who are parts of those traditions are sincere, they would also do that work. Yeah, recognizing the fact.
Brother, you're missing my whole point. What I was saying was, remember, everything is timing, yeah. And what I'm saying to you, what I'm observing, is rather than allowing these brothers are evolving their perspective, and I use myself as an example, yeah. When I jumped on my own version of Hebrew Nazaritism when I was 17 or whatever, if I didn't have Rastaman and Nation of Islam and all these different people around me that I could reference and hear in the debates among them, I may have just forged my way along this line. So I'm saying, for instance, let's say somebody is looking into the Hebrew Israelite thing, because maybe he's had some personal experience where he was treated a certain way by people from Nigeria or whatever else, and he's Afro-Caribbean. I'm saying it would be good for him to see that brothers from the Pan-African community have done work where he can look at the Hebrew or through the Hebrew glasses from another perspective than those who's given him that thing. Because I'm saying, where you might say it's not your responsibility, I'm suggesting it's all of ours, but some of us may not take it up. Now, because others don't take it up, that don't mean I'm not going to. That's my point.
Isa, if they want
to... Sorry, can I just say there? Because I have to jump on a couple of other things. Right?
Hold on, Ezra, the brother has to go, maybe. Sorry, Dalian, go ahead, brother.
Sorry, brothers. What I'm going to do, I'm going to leave myself logged in on the YouTube. So if you need me to come back in at any time, you just kind of send me a tag, yeah? And I'll come back, yeah? So I'll keep it open. Yeah, but thanks for having me. And I hope I've added
Give thanks, brother.
Every time.
Yes, sir.
Every day, every time. You, brother.
Yeah. Stay tuned. We've got an introduction to African Spirituality episode coming on Got Kush TV featuring Brother Dalian, breaking down the thing and some of the stuff that he wasn't able to go into today. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point clear. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Shaka, what about African spiritualist Shaka Zulu, who killed more Africans than anyone on the planet? Get me? What about him?
What about
it's all right for you to come with kumbaya thing today. Yeah, but what about African spiritualists?
Just change up quick, boy. Raw.
I know you noticed, yeah. I thought it was just me.
No, but that's good. That's good. Hold on.